Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We hope that you enjoy today's sermon by our pastoral staff at Christpoint Church. We also want you to know that if you have any questions, prayer requests, or need information on any of our ministry opportunities, you can email us at www.info@christpoint.church. We love you and we are praying that this will be the best year yet. Welcome home.
Chapter 1 is every celebration begins with a gathering. It all started. So let's just back up. It all started with a divorce. I mean, a lot of good things don't start with a divorce, you guys. So all this started with a divorce and a following gathering. So early in this 1500s, the Protestant Reformation had began to start really getting some legs, and churches were springing up all about Europe and into England. And there's a guy named Henry VIII, and Henry VIII, he basically went to the Pope of the Catholic Church and said, you know what? I don't like the wife that I have. I want you to grant me a divorce. So, I mean, every guy should be able to do that, right? So he goes to the Pope and he says, I request a divorce. And the Pope just politely and firmly said, no, I'm not going to give you or grant you a divorce from your wife because you just don't want to be married to her anymore. So this is what happened. The king separated from the Catholic Church because at this point in time, a Reformation had begun. If he'd have been born a generation earlier, he couldn't have done it. There would have been nothing. He could have separated in two. So all of a sudden now there's a reason why I can separate. So a lot of good and a lot of bad came out of this. So now I can separate from the Catholic Church, and they formed the Anglican Church, which Anglican means England. So the first church of England, they formed, and they made King Henry, recognized him as supreme head of earth. You notice they just plugged and pasted the Catholic teaching. So they made King Henry the supreme head on earth, immediately under God. So he was he was the voice of God. All of a sudden we got a guy that knows that's not been trained in ministry, that's all of a sudden now speaking into everybody's lives. And he was placed over the entire Church of England. So you can see that this probably took off pretty well. He had a daughter a little later on, and this daughter's name was Elizabeth. Later on, she became known as Queen Elizabeth. So we've heard these names. And she was raised pretty well Protestant. She was raised Protestant, not Catholic. And she brought a Protestant character into the Anglican Church. But there were some Protestants, there were some Protestant groups that said, wait a minute, you've just basically unplugged from the Catholic Church and plugged back in the Anglican Church, and it looks the same and it sounds the same, except he's the supreme being on earth. This is not how we read the Word. So these Protestant groups began to start separating. See, they didn't fully agree with the Anglican theology. So one of those groups that broke away, they considered their congregation to be independent. We're independent. We're separate. We're separate. We want to have a teaching and a lifestyle that is pure to the gospel. Not pure to the church, but pure to the gospel. And they became known as separatists or Puritans. So the Puritans gave up trying to reform the Anglican Church. They tried that for about a generation or so, and they just gave up on that. We can't make this work. It's not working. We're trying with everything we have. So these Puritans sought a place to worship Jesus. And Puritans, at this point, began to call themselves Pilgrims. When they basically got a clearance and financing to set sail for America in the early 1600s. So all of a sudden, now we're starting to see this start to play into us. 3,000 miles and several months later, they arrived in Massachusetts at Cape Cod at a place we know as Plymouth Rock. So why am I telling you this history lesson? You're saying, I didn't sign up for a fourth grade history lesson. Well, you know what? Maybe it's because if you're like me, you didn't pay attention in the fourth grade, and you let all this pass you by. This is very important to us because we need to be constantly reminded that praise in the courts only happens after Thanksgiving at the gates. We can't praise in the courts unless we give thanks at the gates. And celebrations are preceded by a gathering. So it's hard to have a celebration without a gathering. I mean, trust me, I know. My wife, the only thing that we don't do together is watch TV. I celebrate UT wins by myself. I'm texting Austin back and forth. What's up? Hey, oh, awesome. Yeah, I'm having a celebration, but it's not. It's just a little bit of a. I mean, that's about all I get and then I'll tell Tina, and she says, this morning, I said, Vols won. Go Big Vols. I said, it's go Big Orange, honey. So, she's like, okay, I'm getting it. So I even told her, I said, hey, I wonder if the girls would want to go to a game. She said, no, they wouldn't want to. They don't understand it. So anyway, celebrations are preceded by gatherings. That's how we get our celebrations, is with gatherings of people. So notice, the world wants to bypass Thanksgiving. The world wants to bypass Thanksgiving. They have no problem whatsoever bypassing Thanksgiving because there's not enough money to be made at Thanksgiving. The commercialism of it. Why don't we just go ahead and start commercializing Christmas about September? So then we can start getting a springboard before the other guy does. The world's wanting to fly straight into Christmas. Maybe it's because the enemy has spent so much effort and so much time infecting the courts of praise, because do you realize that our world now is not so much focused on the birth of Jesus as they are focused on Santa Claus. They're focused on gifts and Christmas trees and programs and all this stuff. Maybe it wouldn't hurt us a bit just to be able to slow down and say, hey, wait a minute. If I don't give a gift, or if I don't get a gift, and if I don't spend thousands of dollars, it's still not going to change the fact that Jesus was born. We don't know when, but this is the day we chose to celebrate it. And let's gather and let's celebrate it. See, he says, this is what the enemy's mentality is that I'm going to focus everything on Christmas, but this is what he did. He left the gates of Thanksgiving unguarded. Maybe it's because he has weakened down the reason for Thanksgiving. Maybe he just, if I could get the school systems to quit talking about the religious aspects of Thanksgiving and about pilgrims and indigenous people, and if you don't like that word, I'm sorry, I'm an indigenous people, all right? So, hey, I can say it if I want to. So maybe I can get them to talk about those things and not talk about how much power of the Holy Spirit was at work. Because I don't want people to know about that. So, also, the Puritans or the Pilgrims came to America, and this is why they came to America. They didn't come to America so they could plant corn. They didn't come to America so they could die in the first freezing winter. We're going to talk about next week. They didn't come to America so they could be scared to death and don't know if they're going to make friends with Indians or not. They didn't come for that reason. They came to America to worship God and to serve God as pure as they could possibly be. So we'll be the church that sets up, and we could set the church up as pure as we possibly can. There's no hindrances. So this is why we have this heritage. So why bypass the gate? Because the gate is where the gathering happens. This is why Satan wants us to bypass the gates, because gathering happens at the gates, and he knows it. So let me show you some scripture. In Ruth chapter 4, verse 11, the gate was a seat of authority. It's where authority was established. In Proverbs 1, verse 21, wisdom was uttered at the gates. In Deuteronomy 16, verse 18, justice was administered at the gates. Nehemiah chapter 8, verses 2 and 3, the word was read at the gates. Ezra set himself up at the water gate. Gates had a very specific significance. A sheep gate, a water gate, all these gates, Ephraim gate, all these gates had a meaning and a significance. And Ezra set himself up at the water gate, and he read aloud to the people the word of God. He read aloud to the people. So the word was read and established at the gate. Not somewhere else, but at the gate. Jeremiah 17, verses 19 and 20, prophecy was given at the gate. Things happened at the gate. Commerce happened at the gate. Politics happened at the gate. Social activity happened at the gate. Do you realize that if you don't know this story, I challenge you to read it, that one of David's sons rose up to try to take the kingdom away from him. His name was Absalom. Absalom sat at the gates to make sure he politicked at the gates. Because the gate is where people gathered. Genesis chapter 19, verse 1. The angels found Lot at the gates. The 4 lepers, they brought the spoils back at the gates. So a lot of things happen at the gates. Mordecai did business at the gates. He foiled an assassination attempt on the king because he heard what happened at the gates. People had to enter the gates before they could enter into the place of worship. People had to enter the gates before they could enter into a place of worship. We call this a sanctuary. People have to enter through the gates, what we call the front doors, before they can enter into the courts. You can't just teleport yourselves into this place. Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 2. Stand in the gate of the Lord's house and proclaim there this word and say, hear the word of the Lord, all you men, which means everyone, who enters these gates to worship the Lord. So, prophecy given, word given, activity happened at the gate. Commerce happened at the gate. The gate was where the people gathered. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, because thanksgiving prepares the heart for praise. So, here's the problem. Sometimes our worst place to be, our worst place, may just turn out to be our greatest gathering. Sometimes we don't like to be in our places. Sometimes we're not realizing what God's doing during this time. It's just a hard place to be sometimes. Let me show what I'm talking about. Sometimes our greatest opportunity we'll find at our gates, at our gathering. See, our gathering sometimes may look more like a hole in the ground than it does a gateway of thanksgiving. And you say, what? I mean, sometimes it just looks like a hole in the ground. You know, I'm supposed to be excited about this. I'm supposed to be. We have a world that is imperfect. We serve in a world that is imperfect. We are bound in a time and an age in this disposition that is imperfect. And people will let us down and things happen. And we have people, some of us will celebrate our holidays this year without some of the people that were there last year. It's just a tough time to go through. And we look at it and we say, hey, I just don't see my gateway looking like a place of thanksgiving right now. So let me just I want to read you these scriptures, then I want to kind of break down what's happening. Psalms 142, verse 1. Here's what this guy says. I cry out to the Lord. I cry out to the Lord. I plead for mercy. Verse number 2. I pour out my complaint. I don't see a lot of praise going on here. Verse 3. My spirit faints. My spirit faints. I'm about to wear thin, y'all. I don't have any tread left. So my spirit wears thin. Verse 4, no one notices me and no one even cares for me. So not only do we get to a place to where we think no one notices, but we believe no one cares. So we think no one notices, we believe no one cares. Verse 6, I'm in desperation. I am in desperate need. I need someone to rescue me. Now, this guy is pouring out everything about him, and it's not that great. He's in a place that looks pretty low. I cry out to the Lord. I pour out my complaint. My spirit faints. No one notices me. No one cares. I am in desperate need. I'm in desperation. I am depressed. Please rescue me. And then I want to read verse 7 from the NIV. Set me from my prison. Now, I want you to notice something with me. Set me from my prison. What is my prison? My prison is my desperation. My prison is the place I need to be rescued from. My prison is my depression. My prison is where no one notices me and no one cares. My prison is where my spirit faints and I'm about to give up. I am so worn thin. My spirit is where I pour out my complaint, and my spirit is where I'm crying out to the Lord, or my prison. Set me from my prison. You know what the prison is? He's saying, set me from my prison. I need a gate. Because without a gate, I can't get out of my hole. I need a gate. Set me from my prison. Give me a gate that I may praise your name. Then, notice, I need a gate, and until I get a gate, I can't do the next part. Give me a gate to set me free, that I may praise your name. Then the righteous will gather about me. Then the righteous will gather about me. This psalm was written by cavemen. This psalm was written by cavemen. He was a king with no kingdom. He was a warrior with no army and a leader with no followers. This guy was, as my pastor used to say, broke, busted, and disgusted. He was about as far gone as you could be. But let's find out who this guy is. Let's go back to verse 1, Psalms 142:1, and let's just see who this guy is. A mass skill, or a musical, or a contemplation, or a prayer and song of David when he was in the cave. When he was in the cave. So this is what happens. This is what we find out that David's crying out to the Lord, and this is what we find out. This is from David for when he was in, you notice it says, the cave. He was in the cave. The cave was where things changed for David. David noticed some things changing when he was in the cave. Now, if you notice, it says the cave. Now, it may have been more of an introduction rather than a verse, but I want you to notice it says the cave. When I go home today, I don't go to a home, I go to the house. I will say to Tina, you going to the house? Yeah. Tina, I'll see you at home? Yes. Not a home, not a house, but the house. If you'll notice, when he was in the cave was his place. It was his home. This was where things began to change for David. It didn't look like a place of change. It didn't look like a gate of thanksgiving. It didn't look like it was one of those places, but you know what? It was about to be one. He didn't see it coming. The cave was David's gate in disguise, and he didn't see it. Sometimes our gathering might just be our breakthrough, and it is dependent upon our thanksgiving. So the cave that the enemy wanted to isolate and destroy David with became his gathering place. The cave that the devil wanted to isolate. See, here's what he wants to do with you. He wants to get you in the darkest place and isolate you so he can destroy you in that place. And if you'll notice, this is what he uses. Not the location, but the mentality. I'm broke, busted, and disgusted. I can't stand everybody around me. I can't stand myself. I'm depressed. No one cares for me. No one thinks about me. You notice all of a sudden when we get in that place, all we see is who doesn't care for us. All we see is who's not reaching out to us. That's all we can see. So this became his gathering place. The devil wanted to isolate him, but instead, the Lord turned it around on him. I want to show you what happened in the cave. 1 Samuel chapter 22, verses 1 and 2. So David escaped to the cave of Adullam, the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and all of his father's house heard it, they went down. Now, I want to stop right there for a second. David escaped. Where did he escape from? Where did he escape from? Because when he was in the cave, he was still in his mental prison. So where did he escape from? Well, because number one, David's been anointed king several years earlier as a young boy. God has said, you're going to be the king, anointed him as king, but yet he has no kingdom. And the king who is in power is wanting to kill him. Because now we have a younger king that everybody's going to like. And David rises up and becomes his slayers of tens of thousands. And Saul his slayer of thousands. And Saul becomes jealous and tries to kill him over and over and over. And David has to literally escape. Saul brought him into his home and made him part of his family. And David is trying his best to serve his king. He said, even at the worst of my days, I won't lay a hand or speak against the Lord's anointed. So now he has ran away and into the protection of the enemy. King Achish of Gath, the Philistines. And he's even living over on the other side with the enemy. And now he's come back. He's escaped from the enemy. And he's come back to the cave. This is home for him, y'all. This is home. And now, not only is he in a cave, but his father's house, and his brothers leave their comfortable, dry homes with some type of a sleeping mat, and they go to a wet, damp, and dark cave just because they follow the anointing. People, I'm telling you right now, people won't follow what you say, but they'll follow who you are. They'll follow the anointing. David had people follow him into a hole in the ground. I'm telling you, there is nothing appealing about a hole in the ground. I've been in 1,000 of them in Middle Tennessee. My wife went into one time. She said, I'll never go back again. 2 things she don't do is go underground and in cold water. So that's, or get cold. Let's just put so she'll get cold. So, I'm not ever doing it again. Okay, you're not ever doing it again. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. We used to do it regularly. And there's nothing appealing about it. It's dark, it's damp, it's ugly, it's cold. But notice in verse 2, and everyone who was in distress. These are people who are very much in trouble. All the people who are in distress. These are people who you know what, it's not going very well for me. And not only did the people who were in distress, and everyone who was in debt. Now we've got distressed people, and we've got people who are in debt. Do you realize that when you were indebted to someone in those days, if you couldn't pay the debt, then you became their slave. And once you became their slave, you never, and your household and your posterity never came out of that slavery. You were selling your entire lineage into slavery. So no wonder they're running around and hiding, because they're in debt and they can't pay debts. So they're in distress, they're in debt, and everyone who was bitter in soul, man, these are people who just would rather just beat you up than to talk to you. These are people that are just about at the end of their rope. And these people, along with his father's house, and his brothers, gathered to him, and he became commander over them in the cave, while they were in the cave, and there with them were about 400 men. So all of a sudden, we've got a guy who's been anointed king, who's running from the king, who's been rejected by God, who's going to be killed if ever. He's public enemy number 1, hands down. There are wanted posters for him everywhere and rewards. So he's it's a bad deal for him. He's a young man. He's running for his life. Everything about him, he is alone. He is by himself. He has nobody around him. Then all of a sudden, he goes to his cave as a caveman and finds 400 misfits that are just like him. 400 misfits just like him. Why do I love this story so much? Because when I came to Christpoint Church, I found misfits that fit me, just like me. Just like me. You know what? You walk in here and you say, well, you know what? I just don't know if I fit in. You trust me. You fit in. Trust me. You do. You do. I just want you to know that Christpoint's your home. And we may be a little bit misfit, and we may be a little bit of cave dwellers, but we are who God made us. And you know what? We're going to give thanks in that cave. David became king over all these people, or became their leader, their commander. And David's cave became his thanksgiving. David's hole in the ground became his place of gathering. David's hole in the ground became his gateway of thanksgiving. See, the Thanksgiving story, chapter 1, is simply this. Every high court has a gate. Every high court has a gate. All praise begins with thanksgiving. And every celebration starts with some type of gathering. David made the cave his place of thanksgiving. He made the gates his transition to his courts. Because when he was in his cave, he said, free me from my prison. Rescue me from my prison. Get me out of my prison so that I may praise you, and so that other people may see you, and those other people gather to me to do the same. David was praying for a gate. He was praying for a gate to enter through. But he wasn't going to get that gate unless he gave thanksgiving first. David made the cave his place of thanksgiving. Gates transition us to the court, y'all. 10 years earlier, there was about a 17-ish year period from the time David was anointed king to the time he was coronated as king. So there was about a 17-year period that it didn't look very well. And this cave experience is a little less than halfway through this. About 10 years after this cave time, something happened. And we can read 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 1. And this is what happened. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron. See, if you notice, he's not in Jerusalem because Jerusalem's not even housed, not even occupied by Israel. So he sets up a temporary place in Hebron. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron. I want you to notice what happened in verse 3. And that at Hebron, they anointed David king over Israel. They anointed David king over Israel. Every celebration starts with a gathering. Let's not forsake the gathering. Let's not just bypass the gathering. Because God's given us a gathering. We wouldn't have a nation. We wouldn't have a country. We wouldn't have a freedom. We wouldn't have an American dream unless first some people gathered about 400 years ago to worship. See, that had to come first. They wanted to gather to worship, and they entered his gates with thanksgiving. They wanted to worship, they wanted to serve God. Your Thanksgiving story is this. This is your Thanksgiving story. Be who you were intended to be all along. That's a Jesus worshiper. He didn't create you to be something else. Be what you were intended to be all along, and that is a Jesus worshiper. Hey, thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for spending some time with us in service at Christpoint Church. And just wanting you to know that we love you guys, and you are an important part of Christpoint Church. If you're disconnected or in another state, or you want more updates, please visit us on our website. You can email us at info@christpoint.church. And if you want to know how to give, we have a text to give. You can see it flashing right now. Also, you can give on the app. A lot of people are asking about that. So we just want you to know that you are a vital and important part of Christpoint Church. Now, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending some time with us online and on TV. We are real people, living real lives, serving a real God. Welcome home.